Got it.
All right, there we go. We back. We back. So the point I was making before we got cut off, is that with these stories that are being told, man, I'm not gonna lie to you. The more I just hear this information, read this information over and over again, it's the same feeling that I've always got about this stuff, is that a lot of historical events had this in the backdrop. Like, these things were the things that were actually happening when they were waging wars over different things, when certain conversations were happening amongst countries, the axis of powers, World War II, World War I, all these different things. I feel like the real backdrop stories of the things that were actually happening were these. And the public spectacle that they were putting on was just a front. It was just a cover. Oh yeah, we're fighting over
To bring democracy.
ideology. we're fighting over resources. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
man,
Nah,
shut the fuck
so
up, bro. Y'all, like, this is a bigger. There's way bigger things to be fighting over, and think about how important it would be. Just like the whole moon landing. Supposedly these countries are racing to be the first to land on the moon, obviously for various reasons. Like, even if just keep it simplistic, just from a government military perspective, well, the first country that reaches these outer limits and sets up shop now has a captivating
strategic advantage
over the world,
Absolutely.
right? But
Absolutely.
and that's just from a military perspective, let alone extraterrestrial, advanced
Esoteric
civilizations,
magic,
new
yeah, any of these
technology.
other,
You
right?
know what I mean? Like that's a whole nother conversation. But I do really, just deep in my soul, like, just when I look at these pictures of these people, just this backdrop of this story, you cannot tell me that a lot of these events in history, Cold Wars, and these different things really weren't about stuff like this. The hunt, they're hunting something, and everybody wants it first, and whoever
Right.
gets to it, they think in
Unbridled
their mind
power
that
in one way or the other.
it's gonna get them supreme power. But when, truth be told, that's probably not what's gonna happen. They're probably gonna be met with some form of opposition. If it remains true that it's ancient, technologically more advanced civilizations, I'm pretty sure that's not gonna let you abuse.
just take it and start.
Yeah, just start, like, come back and start blowing shit up, and what I mean. So,
Yeah.
but either way, the point of the matter is that I really do believe that these things are the backdrops. These are the real. This is the true history of the world. This is what I believe. Like, when I hear these stories, I'm like, oh, this is what I thought I should have been hearing in school. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
It's like,
100%.
this would have been engaging to the students.
Right.
This would have kept them awake.
Oh
You know
my
what I mean?
God. Oh my God.
You get what I'm saying?
What?
You feel me? Like, it's like these are the tale. These are the when we open to chapter 5, it should have been like, oh, the Rorik's hunt for
Right. Agartha.
Middle Earth.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Bro, and
So
it's so wild because the movies that when you don't remember a lot from your childhood, but there's certain things in your childhood that just burn themselves into your brain.
right,
And for whatever reason, Indiana Jones, when they were looking for the Holy Grail, I may have seen that movie twice in my entire life, but there is just a part of that movie that is so etched into my brain
right,
about searching for these truths and about the different organizations that I think that ended up helping lead to these investigations. You know what I mean? Like
right.
those were things that just resonated so much. But what teacher is going to be like, oh, you're interested in finding Agartha, huh? Well, let me give you a book or two to help you with that. Like
Exactly.
you just wouldn't be able to. You just don't have access to this. So, thank
Exactly.
God for a replay and review, because these are the areas that we're going to be able to disseminate this information and hopefully get those young people who are actually interested in what's going on beneath the surface layers of media, to really see what we could be searching for in this world, man. Like for real, for real.
Sure. I mean, like I said, I make one last point, but back to what I was saying is just this idea that really, truly, I think a lot of people are just bored. The information that's being given to them, it's not worth a damn. Like it just you're dozing off, you're uninterested. People are just dropping out of school left and right because
Mhm.
they're being told that, it's just these mundane things that you're supposed to know. And it's like, yo, you're telling me when I look in nature and I see these fantastical things, things that seemingly look impossible, look like things out of fantasy, um, things that might, it looks like things that are not from this earth, these different types of things. You're telling me that there's not a bigger picture to that. You want to just
Right.
tell me that that's
Just
just
imagination.
that's
No,
just the
that's
way it
just
is. There's no rhyme or reason or anything. I
right.
mean, you think there's a rhyme or reason to these things? I mean, it's God. I mean, that's the and not to say that it's not God. It's just to say that there's nothing wrong with figuring
Having a
out the
deeper
other.
understanding or relationship with that God, right?
Exactly.
Like, I don't think God gave us these brains and these abilities to not be able to understand them, but we definitely don't have access to the information that will allow us to have a better understanding of our world, of our God, of our, of our divine spark or whatever you want to call it. Like, these are the things that really should matter. And to be,
Exactly.
I mean, that's what it is, just commoners. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to reach a level before you're granted access to a lot of this information.
For
So I
sure.
can I can imagine that what we have now is probably 2%, maybe 0.5% of what's really going on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
For
even in this
sure.
internet age, this stuff is very much still highly controlled. And I think that, thank God we have access to this information. But to really, really gay, man, you gotta have some status for real, man.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get back to it. Let's see where it goes. I'm excited to see where he takes it.
And they might have actually found it. Nicholas and Helena Rourke were incredibly capable individuals.
Hmm.
Both were writers. Nicholas was a renowned painter and archaeologist, and Helena was a translator and philosopher. That requires some skills, which you too can obtain through Skillshare, a community with thousands of classes to discover new interests
Yo,
and
can we
deepen
pause that real
existing
quick?
passions.
Oh.
Now, I'm not endorsing.
Look how he seamlessly added that in there, yo. Look how he seamlessly put that
Yo,
in there,
Mr.
man.
Mythos, get your money, man. Get your ducats, bro. Because that was a smooth ass transition.
100%.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody
Smooth,
with the
bro. Smooth.
with a smoother transition. Jesus Christ, I almost fell out my seat
she
just
was
then.
she, she was very skilled. You can be skilled too. Oh man.
Yo,
But he's
this.
really he's really downplaying exactly what their roles are. You know what I mean? Like, he's
Mhm.
really, really downplaying the fact that mysticism was highly renowned and highly regarded amongst, like, elite of our cultures.
Right.
So when you think about, I think JP Morgan said, um millionaires don't need astrologers, billionaires do.
Mm.
So these are people who garner the attention, garner the respect, but also they've put in a lot of work in their respective fields. So when they just say she's a writer, a translator, and a philosopher, that's really, really downplaying all of her accolades and what she was able to achieve in her
Well,
her
it
in
it
her in her research.
right. It downplays it, but it also gives it foundation to say these were not just some off the street people that just came up with some harebrained idea and scheme. They were legitimate people with legitimate careers. So I agree with what you're saying, but I also think that they're also, just underlying showing they had no reason to go looking for this thing. They had careers that they could have just lived out like
That's true.
normal people,
That's true.
but for some strange reason, supposedly they got this kooky idea that hey, the Earth has
We
a
have to go do
civilization in the
this.
middle of it, like what I mean. So and people actually believed them, and or also believed in these things as well. And it's not ironic. It's how ironic is it that Hitler was interested in the occult, and the story is that he himself sent the Nazis out looking for similar things. And that was 20, 30 years later. So
Hmm?
that also shows that this wasn't just something that was exclusive to the time period or that particular year or that particular section of time. This is something that became a normal thing. And I believe that all of these stories just gel together. Back to my point of these are the real stories that are behind the thin veil of what they're putting out for us to supposedly know.
100%.
So let's continue.
that you set out like the Roriks in search of a hidden subterranean kingdom, but Skillshare teaches everything from travel journaling to wilderness survival.
Yo, he's killing me.
Wherever your journey takes you, Skillshare has the tools to keep you focused and motivated and inspired through any challenge. The first 1,000 of you to click my link in the description will get a 1-month free Skillshare trial. So come join me in this awesome class, Experience the Outdoors, a beginner's guide to watercolor landscapes by Khadija Karachiwala. Can Skillshare and Khadija teach Mr. Mythos to paint like Nicholas Rourke? There's only one way to find out. Landscapes by Khadija Karachiwala. Can Skillshare and Khadija teach Mr. Mythos to paint like Nicholas Rourke? There's only one way to find out. I'll see you in class.
Shout out Mr. Mythos.
Dressed in the robes of a Dalai Lama, a man many times called the Russian Leonardo da Vinci arrived in the frostbitten cold of Darjeeling, British India, a city of tea plantations and Buddhist monasteries at the foot of the eastern Himalayan mountains. It was December 1923. His name was Nicholas Rourke. Hoisting an American flag tied to a Mongolian spear, he spoke with a thick Russian accent, convincing local authorities that he was leading an archaeological expedition to document the art and culture of Central Asia. This was a half-truth. His journals, paintings, and the bizarre events of their journey provide overwhelming evidence that the Rourke's true purpose was to locate the entrance to Shambhala. With Nicholas was his wife Helena, their son George, and a crew of 6 associates. Their journey would span 5 years, 35 mountain passes, 21,000 feet of elevation, and 15,000 miles of uncharted roads. And by the end, 5 of them would die. The Himalayas are one of the coldest, most mountainous, uncharted, and utterly inhospitable regions on Earth. To make matters worse, a decade prior, Tibet had become an independent war-torn state after the collapse of China's Qing dynasty, and closed itself off from the rest of the world. Foreigners caught in Tibet could expect to be enslaved, tortured, and likely killed. And beyond draconian authorities, the mountains were riddled with bandit groups and rogue warlords. It was less of a family preference than a vital strategy that the Rourke's eldest son, George, was in charge of keeping them alive. On top of being a notable Tibetologist who could speak the local dialects, he was a very skilled military tactician. So they set off. Nicholas documented this journey in 2 separate diaries, one purely scientific and the other highly esoteric. He also created over 500 paintings. And whether or not they knew it, they were being followed and monitored by British, American, and Soviet spies, at least until they disappeared. From extreme winds.
Femi, why, bro? Why are they being followed? Why? What's the point? It's nonsense. It's fantasy.
It's art. It's art and culture. It's archaeology. You need spies to follow archaeologists?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, why? Like, spies from numerous countries. I mean, come on, man. Like, what are we listening to? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, come on, guys. Like, if we have any common sense at all, like, what is this telling you? Like, this is telling
something
you
to
that
pay attention to.
Not only are you dealing with, I mean, his son, for Jesus' sake, was a Tibetologist, military tactician. I mean, these were serious people. Like, these aren't hillbillies, backwoods, country folk. Like, these guys are sharp. I mean, suited up, booted up, educated, skilled in numerous categories of occupations. So I mean, it's mind-boggling, man, that people.
These aren't people that went to high school and college,
right?
I think these are people that studied under people who of renown, and
did they not say that he was considered the Russian Leonardo da Vinci?
Bro, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah,
Leonardo was multi genius as well, right?
Let's continue. Jesus Christ, this is crazy, man.
And scurvy to caravan looters and poison grass which killed their horses. Nicholas's diaries reflected uncertainties as they crossed the Taklamakan Desert.
Is the heart of Asia beating, or has it been suffocated by the sands?
As the months, then years passed, Nicholas Rourke would document in his journal a looming sense that the hidden Inner-Earth kingdom was approaching. The mountain passes thickened with the bones of donkeys, mules, and yaks.
It's not startling to see so many skeletons,
he wrote. The mystic began recording manifestations of fire and strange lights over their camp. As his scientific diary became sparse with entries, his esoteric journal filled with visions, stories, and riddles. Legend tells that as one comes closer to the entrance of Shambhala, the vaguer their thoughts become, because the aura of the city itself begins to infiltrate the mind, an aura so spiritually potent and physically complex, it cannot be explained by mortal means of communication. Nicholas was apparently being communicated to, though, by a very powerful being. In his paintings, he began obsessively depicting a figure he believed to be the messianic ruler of Shambhala, a being who, according to ancient prophecies, was destined to appear on Earth for the final destruction of the wicked, the renovation of creation, and the restoration of purity. In fact, otherworldly communication is supposedly how the Roriks came to search for Shambhala in the first place, but it was not Nicholas. Several years prior, from their home in New York, Helena Rorik was struck by telepathic instructions from an entity known as Master Moria. In the occult religion known as Theosophy, Master Moria is one of several so-called Masters of Ancient Wisdom. The founders of Theosophy, as well as several early members, claim to have met and been mentored by these mysterious ascended beings. The Master's supposed mission was to guide humanity toward higher spiritual attunement and facilitate the next evolution of the human race. The Roriks were, by all means, exceptionally gifted mystics who exhibited convincing abilities to channel and communicate with the spiritual realm, among other supernatural powers such as premonition and healing. In particular, Helena's telepathic instruction from Master Moria was enough that they both became absolutely convinced of the literal existence of Shambhala. Why else, at the height of their extremely successful careers, would they choose to embark on an exceedingly dangerous, multi-year journey than to search for something they legitimately believed existed? Deep into the mountains, these powerful visions sent by the ruler of Shambhala led Nicholas to begin to identify himself as the reincarnation of the 5th Dalai Lama, explaining why he could feel the presence of Shambhala. The Dalai Lamas, the foremost spiritual leaders of Tibetan Buddhism, are believed to channel their energy directly from Shambhala, and thus are inherently connected to it. One of the final events recorded in Nicholas's diary was a description of a flying craft, which 7 members of their crew witnessed. This sighting is notable because it occurred 24 years before UFOs became of public interest. In his own words,
On August 5th, something remarkable. We were in our camp in the Kukunar district, not far from the Humboldt chain. In the morning, about 9:30, some of our caravanners noticed a remarkably big black eagle flying above us. 7 of us began to watch this unusual bird. At this same moment, another of our caravanners remarked, "There's something far above the bird," and he shouted in his astonishment. We all saw, in a direction from north to south, something big and shiny reflecting the sun, like a huge oval moving at great speed. Crossing our camp, this thing changed in its direction from south to southwest, and we saw how it disappeared into the intense blue sky. We even had time to take out our field glasses, and saw quite distinctly an oval form with a shiny surface, one side of which was brilliant from the sun.
it was after this event that the Roriks and their entire crew seemingly disappeared from the face of the Earth, despite being closely monitored by Soviet, American, and British intelligence. Communications ended, and the world considered the Roriks dead. The only source we have for what occurred during this time is Nicholas's diary,
let's pause
which
real quick,
revealed
man.
that the last 5 months of their journey were spent.
Hold on one second for me. Call you back in a minute. Yep. Go ahead, Femi.
I said French before. I thought it was like British, American, and French, but it's British, Soviet, and American.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that timing. They see something that he documented in his journal. Bro, where'd that UFO come from, man?
You know what's funny is
That I don't think that came from outer. I think that came from inner, bro. Like, yo, we got some people over here. All right, man, pull up, bring them in, man. Bring 'em
yo, it's like yo, they're getting kind of close. Somebody
This
sends
is the one that you're feeling. This is the
look,
person that you're sensing.
right.
Feel that, bro.
You're right. Like, should I go stop them? Like, they're like
They're
a
pretty
1,000
close.
miles away, but it's closer than anybody's ever came. So,
right.
But no, what's interesting is the fact that even without having like this an extensive knowledge, just the general person has always heard about Tibetan monks and maybe even seen videos and kind of the perception of a monk and this idea that they're isolated individuals who are highly spiritual, who can even possibly be so spiritual and so isolated and so dedicated to what they're doing that they end up having almost unnatural abilities, in some sense, maybe a crazy form of not a crazy form, but a more detailed way of fighting, a more extraordinary way of doing martial arts, an extraordinary way to do certain things. So it's interesting to actually find that this story is rooted in the very place that these people inhabit. And just the idea that, what they said about the Dalai Lama, and that they're gaining their energy through the source of Shambhala itself, which, I mean, it lines up almost so perfectly that it's hard not to believe. That's how I look at it. It's like, it's one of these things that people typically say, like, oh, that's not adding up. I can't go for that. I can't believe that. But in this particular case, it's like, I know there's a thing to being able to tell a good story and make people believe certain things, but this ain't one of them. Like, it literally just pound for pound just adds up to me, where it's like, this is true. Like, I mean,
we've heard about Tibetan monks our whole lives. You know what I mean? Like, that is something that those are people that are disconnected. And those are people that have even before I was doing all this research, I knew, like, yeah, Tibetan monks, like that. Those are people that can spend 12 hours meditating or whatever. And little do we know who they could be in contact with, or what energy they can be in contact with, and how they're accelerating their attunement when it comes to, being human and things like that. And being able to fill that in a little bit more, and not just say, hey, you know what, they're just looking within, but they could actually be guided potentially by people that know more, that have been here a lot longer, that have been able to resist the distractions that the surface world, that our world is dealing with right now. You know what I mean? So I absolutely, that, like you say, they do line up. Of all places in the world for this journey to happen, or for them to be even remotely close to Tibet, of all places, this really, really has this aligns a lot with the spiritual connotation of Tibet and Tibetan monks.
Right. And I mean, I agree with you. And what it makes me think about is this idea that a lot of people have troubles connecting with something like a higher power, because it's almost like they don't know where to look. So when you hear people say, oh yeah, the higher power spoke to me, or these different things, or I had an encounter with a spiritual being, or what have you, it's like, for a lot of people it's hard to believe, because you're just like, why am I not having these encounters, right? But when they're explaining, people like the monks, that just kind of opens a window to, this is what it's like when you actually are being guided by something actual. When you are deeply rooted or deeply connected to this source that you've known about for thousands of years, or a millennia, what have you, however you want to explain it, it makes sense that they stay isolated, because they're like, you guys don't even understand what we're doing up here, and what we see and what we know and what we're connected to. That makes the outside world seem trivial.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We think we're the cool kids out here watching TV and partying and drinking,
cell phones and stuff like that.
You know what I mean? And then like, you have no, like, we have access to technology that spans thousands of years. So like, it's like, what's these things? They're not even useful to us. So let's get back to it, man. This is getting interesting.
In a Tibetan prison camp, where conditions were so brutal that 5 of their 6 crew members would not survive. However, this leaves more than 7 entire months of their invisible year completely unaccounted for. In 1928, they were released, and the Rourkes quietly returned home. One may quickly conclude that their expedition was a complete failure, but in retrospect, there are legitimate reasons to question whether they might have actually completed their mission as intended, and found the hidden city at some point during those 7 months. First, when Nicholas's diary was finally made public, there was a rather strange entry recorded in the remote valley of Euler, where an old monk led them to the back of a temple, where a large cave opening was blockaded by carefully cut stones. The monk stated that it was a holy entrance to the inner earth kingdom of Shambhala, and forbid them from entering. Secondly, their American sponsors were apparently so pleased with the results of their journey, one which seemingly failed, that the Rourkes were sent back to the Himalayas on a follow-up expedition from 1933 to 1935. The stated purpose of this mission was erosion plant studies in Central Asia, which modern academics agree was a cover for something else entirely.
Yo, man, you got.
No, you don't
They
say.
gotta chill, Femi.
Plants in the Himalayas, bro. Erosion, bro. Erosion. Yo, you gotta go over there, man. Bring some of that dirt back so we can test it.
Yo, man, they gotta chill, bro. They gotta chill, okay?
Erosion. Wow. Go back over there. 2 years? Cool.
Why not
Whatever
send
it
you?
takes.
Why not just send U.S. scientists if you're just?
Why not send special forces or some shit like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people who are way more capable of handling those climates,
Oh God!
but they don't have that connection, man.
I tell you. Let's continue.
This mission was signed off by the U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and funded by Henry A. Wallace, the Secretary of Agriculture and future Vice President, who called Nicholas Rourke his guru. This draws the first direct connection of the Rourkes to the FDR government. During this second expedition, again, they disappeared, this time for 3 months, in the middle of the Himalayan mountains with zero record of their activities. And again, their mission was considered a massive failure. But not so much a failure that President Roosevelt himself signed the Rourke Pact in 1935, marking their second direct connection to the FDR government. Lastly, in 1928, the year in which the party disappeared, Nicholas Rourke is believed to have come into possession of a mysterious object known as the Chintamani Stone.
Did I not say that in the first part when I said, I bet you this man went to the president and sat some shit on his desk like.
Called it, bro.
Yo.
Without seeing this video, you said that shit.
I must be the 6th iteration of the Dalai Lama. I am directly connected to Shambhala. I swear to God.
You gotta bust a move, man.
Yeah.
Rewinding back to 1913, 10 years before their fateful expedition, Nicholas Rourke was assisting in the construction of Russia's first Buddhist temple and became very close to the Lama supervising the project, Agvan Dorjiev, the teacher of the 13th Dalai Lama.
Remember that name?
Their friendship grew so strong
about
that,
that name.
Dorjiev entrusted Rourke with occult knowledge that would ultimately set him on this path. The revelation of a sacred treasure known as the Chintamani, the Eastern equivalent of the Philosopher's Stone. The name Chintamani is Sanskrit, translating to magical stone of another world. And much like Shambhala, the Chintamani is described in the most ancient traditions of India, China, Mongolia, and Tibet. Physically, it is a trapezohedron made of some black stone, which occultists believe to be a meteorite that collided with Earth millions of years ago, believed to have originated from the constellation Orion. Several years before Rourke, the Polish professor and explorer Ferdynand Ossendowski had led a search for Shambhala and Agartha, in which he heard many Sherpas and shamans speak of the powers of the Chintamani. He described a particular encounter with a Tibetan prince, Chultun Beyli, who claimed to have touched it, allowing him a simultaneous glimpse of both past and future. The Lama, Dorjiev, told Nicholas that he wasn't sure whether the Chintamani actually existed, or was simply an ancient metaphor for spiritual attunement. All he could say was that its location was, according to Tibetan tradition, in the King's Tower at the center of Shambhala. Returning to the invisible year of 1928, at some point the Rourkes discovered a remote monastery known as the Trasilumpo Lamasery. Upon entering, Nicholas was shocked to see a massive, tall structure in the middle of the temple. As if anticipating this moment, the abbot of the monastery walked up to him and presented a black gem, 5 inches long, set on an ornate carrying pillow and concealed beneath a veil. Know how to use it, and how not to misuse it, the abbot warned Nicholas. He then revealed the stone's identity, calling it Lapis Exilis, the Stone of Exile, and one of 3 split fragments of the Chintamani meteorite. In the days following, Nicholas carefully examined his Chintamani fragment, guessing it to be made of moldavite, a highly magnetic material used in occult practice, believed to connect to the spiritual realm. In his words, the fragment resembled an
electric accumulator, and may give back in one way or another the energy stored within it. For instance, it will increase the spiritual vitality of anyone who touches it, infusing him with knowledge or enhancing psychic abilities.
On its exterior, etched in Sanskrit, were the following words. Through the stars I come. I bring the chalice covered with the shield. Within it I bring a treasure, the gift of Orion. Many mysteries remain regarding this stone, especially as Nicholas is said to have returned his fragment to the Trasilumpo lamasery several years later, after which the 13th Dalai Lama immediately decreed that all fragments of the Chintamani meteorite must never again leave Tibet, and ordered them to be stowed away in a secret location. The theory goes that any of the 3 fragments of the Chintamani can be used to find and enter Shambhala. So if Nicholas Rourke came into possession of a true Chintamani fragment, it could have been the key he needed to complete his mission and access the Hidden Kingdom. So why did he return his Chintamani? Well, politics in the 1930s were getting a bit messy, and the Rourke certainly had deep ties to multiple world powers, who would have wanted such a powerful object for their own misuse, as the abbot warned Nicholas in 1928. As much as it remains up for debate whether the Rourkes actually reached Shambhala, there is a rather strong theory that they were double agents, funded by the Americans, but searching for the Hidden Kingdom on behalf of Soviet occultists. Scholars of modern Russia and early 20th century history have written at great length on how deeply entrenched the Russian government was regarding the possible resources held by Shambhala, and this stemmed from a growing belief in an ancient Tibetan prophecy. This prophecy describes a future in which humanity has deteriorated from materialism, and the people of the surface become united under an evil king. At this time, Shambhala is foretold to arise from hiding, and the 32nd ruler of Shambhala would ignite a war, employing powerful magical weapons to utterly obliterate the evil king and his forces, ushering in an era of lasting peace between people. As great as peace sounds, these magical weapons became of great interest to the rising world powers, Russia, Britain, Japan, and the US. Many powerful officials took this prophecy literally, including the US Vice President Henry A. Wallace, who eagerly awaited the delivery.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I gotta get out of here.
Okay, we'll do. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Let's just pause it. Let's just literally just pause. And I'm excited to at least finish this video. So let me go and come back, and hopefully you're still available. Charge all this shit up.
Okay, we'll do.
And we can finish it up.
We'll do.
All right.